How to use Catharsis Method, Part 1. There are two halves to Catharsis Method. The first is awareness. The second is management. Today we are going to be focusing on the first half, awareness. So when you first open your box, you're going to see two purple cards sitting on top of the two decks. This is the situation card and the response card, and they are the very first card of the exercise and the last. This is the situations in your life and how you're going to respond to them, and the work that we do today is what takes place between those. As a quick how-to up front, most cards in Catharsis Method have two sides. There is a simple side and a context side. If you're still learning Catharsis Method and trying to get familiar with it, it might be easier to use the context side, which provides more detailed instruction and deeper insights. And once you're more familiar with Catharsis Method, you can use the simple side or both, however you see fit. So let's start with the situation card. This is possibly the most important card of the exercise because it determines what it is that we are processing in this particular sit down. You're going to want to choose something in your life that you have a lot of strong feelings toward and that you could use some clarity and maybe a game plan to move forward with. Some examples of situations that you could choose would be you're worried about losing your job. You got in a fight with a family member or a partner. You've been feeling particularly anxious lately. You've been spending too much time reading the news and it has you feeling powerless. You feel lost just in general in life, lacking a sense of purpose. Any of these examples work perfectly. For the sake of this video, we will use the example of being worried about losing your job. So for our example, we might say out loud or write in our journal, I'm worried about losing my job. Some things have been happening at work. My boss isn't responding to me. We got an email talking about company layoffs, and this has me really worried about how I'm going to pay the bills, and I'm pretty anxious. You can definitely go into more detail with your situation, but even that is just fine. So next we're going to move into the awareness exercise. Catharsis Method is broken into two halves, awareness and management, and these each represent two totally different paradoxically complementing mindsets. While an awareness mindset is focused on authenticity and gathering the raw data of your experience, management is a bit more reactive, and it's about challenging, asking questions, and then innovating a productive way to move forward. So for awareness, the key here is going to be honesty and trying our best to quiet the inner critic as much as you can. Feel exactly what you want to feel, no matter how raw, embarrassing, or intense those feelings might be. So awareness is broken into three pillars: observation, empathy, and intuition. You can go ahead and place those cards. We will follow these pillars as we move through the exercise. But now the meat of what we're doing here in the awareness exercise is building a grid, laying out a few rows and columns. So we're going to start with these 5 cards here, which will be our first row, and they are the headers of each column. So you want to place them in this order: stimulus, appraisal, emotion, function, behavior. These need to be in this exact order because they represent the linear flow of an emotional experience. It starts with the stimulus or trigger, which leads to our initial appraisal or our very first instantaneous thoughts. Those thoughts will inform which emotion we feel, and each emotion has a specific function which motivates unique behaviors. The next step, once we have those columns established, is to look at the 8 primary emotion cards. Those emotions are sadness, joy, surprise, anticipation, fear, anger, disgust, and trust. You want to explore these cards, look at the details on them, and you're going to want to choose which 3 emotions you feel most regarding the situation that you chose to process. So for our example, worrying about losing your job, the 3 emotions we choose might be fear is the strongest emotion that I feel, then anticipation, and then anger. And once we choose those, we will want to place those 3 into the emotion column in order of intensity. So once we've done that, we now want to find the matching emotion sets for each emotion. Each emotion has a unique color, so you'll want to find the 4 cards that match the color of your emotions, and then you'll want to place them in the correct columns making an emotion row. So for these 4 green fear cards, we see this one says stimulus. We'll place that first into the stimulus column, then appraisal, then function, and then behavior. So now you'll notice once we have those 5 cards placed together that they kind of create a little container. And there's a door on the first card, the stimulus card, and then there's another door at the end on the behavior card. And what this represents is entering into the emotional experience of fear. Enter in through the door of the trigger, and you'll move along the pathway to your appraisal, to the emotion, to the function, and then to the behavior, and out the door of that emotional experience, which is how you choose to respond to it. Once you place the emotion sets for your other emotions, we are now done placing cards and we can start to work through the questions. So we're going to be starting with our top emotion, in this case fear, moving from left to right. So we're going to look at the stimulus card for fear. Now what we are doing is trying to trace each individual emotion back to its triggers and all the way forward through their unique behaviors, because we want to become more aware and cognizant of what these emotions mean and why we are feeling them and how they manifest in our experience and in our behaviors. So this question at the very beginning of the fear emotion experience says, what is the source of the threat? It's trying to help you become more aware of what the trigger is for your fear in this particular case. Now, the first time you do Catharsis Method, some of these questions can feel like they're missing a little bit of context. So you want to make sure that you really familiarize yourself with the 8 primary emotions. When you're exploring those, you saw that each has a very short description of what the emotion is. In the case of fear, it says threats to avoid. To become aware of the stimulus for my fear, it is asking what is the source of the threat. So if I'm worried that I'm going to lose my job, the source of the threat might be my boss, or it might be the company layoffs, or it might be that I didn't show up to work yesterday and as a consequence of my actions, I might now lose my job. Whatever the source might be, that's what you should try and answer. And once you do, you can move on to the next question. In this case, for the appraisal, it says describe what it is threatening. So now I would say, well, it's threatening my livelihood and my ability to pay my bills. We move to the next question, skipping over the emotion to function. It asks, why do you feel vulnerable to this? In order for something to be interpreted as a threat, there is some core underlying vulnerability. And so the answer to this question might be, well, I don't have a good savings built up. And so if I lost my job, that's a very big threat. Once you answer that question, we'll move on to behavior. In this case, it says, how are you inclined to avoid this? Well, fear motivates avoidance, and so we want to try and be aware of kind of the instinctual ways that we might respond to an emotion, like hiding from it, numbing ourselves to it, or distracting ourselves from it. And we'll want to get a little bit more literal about what that looks like in our life. If we want to interrupt unhealthy thoughts or behaviors, we need to first become aware of them. Once you answer those questions, we've now completed that row. And you would move on to the next emotion and do the same thing for the second and the third. So with that, it mostly concludes our exercise. And at this point, you want to make sure that you are placing your totems on the cards that evoke particular insights or aha moments. And then also you can opt to deep dive. On the context side of each of those question cards, there are more prompts and deeper questions if you're wanting to go even further with your awareness. Once you are all done with that, traditionally you would move forward into the management exercise, but if it's more appropriate, you can also opt to end the session by moving directly to the last card, the response card, and we will talk about those things in the next how-to video. This awareness exercise, it helps transform emotional confusion into emotional clarity. It's the foundation for everything that follows. So be honest, be descriptive, and lean into the big emotions.